I need introductions. It's like one of the family here every day, and we're just so glad to have you, Eddie, come and share with us.
Thank you, Ron. It's always good to be back at Mapton. I think we started almost on the ground floor with you here about 50 years ago, and we went out in 1965. Hard to believe that this is our 50th year in Africa, so a year or two go by, and I understand your anniversary coming up soon too, so hopefully we can help you celebrate that as well. But it's been a real joy for Linda and me. We spent 40 years and then retired officially, but they began a new program called Special Assignment. And they said if you can keep enough support to pay for your trips over and back, and if your health is still good, and if you get an invitation, why, you can keep going back. So here we are. We were able to go back again in February and spend, this time we just spent a month. We can't go back to Bangui. We used to spend 6 weeks in Cameroon and 6 in Bangui. Well, I said you can't go back to Bangui. Well, they don't have 6 weeks or 2-month visas. It's either 1 month or 3 months. And you can imagine the 3 month really goes up. So we said, why pay several $100s more for an extra 2 weeks? We'll just go for a month this time. And actually we had plenty of time to complete our normal classes that we've been having. So it was a real joy to be back again. And thank you again for your faithful prayers and financial support. And even though rebel activities is now coming to Cameroon with the Boko Haram, the Lord was good to us and protected us. This is one of the first time neither one of us got sick. And so that was an added blessing. And so we're just happy to share with you this recent trip. And then afterward there'll be time for some questions. And we'll share a couple requests here. But Pastor Adams said I can share a little bit in service to follow since more of our friends will be there. So fasten your seatbelts. We'll take you on a quick trip to Africa, Cameroon. And I might mention our granddaughter was here last summer, and when we came home we showed her our, I still call them slides. She said, "Oh Grandpa, this is old stuff, let me fix it." So she spent 3 days bringing it up to date. So this is the modern version of our trip to Africa in PowerPoint.
What happened to the song?
It's on. I don't know, maybe that part isn't working.
Here.
Usually the airplane flies and you hear it all the way from Portland to Paris. And that was about almost a 10, 11-hour trip. And we arrived there and spent 10 days with our family. Here they are at Euro Disney, which we also attended. And Eddie went bowling. We had some good visits. 10 days went by real quickly, and we had to take a plane and again fly a 6-hour trip down to Yaoundé, Cameroon. Well, we had 1 day in which to get everything repacked. Now this was stuff that we had left there, stuff that we brought, stuff that we wanted to leave, stuff that we wanted to take. We had 1 day to do that, and then the next morning, bright and early, go to the airport and fly to Yaoundé, Cameroon, where they were having national conference. Now this time we didn't have to take that miserable train. This one that we had spent 33 hours on the last time, but were able to take a flight from Yaoundé, but it was an interesting flight. If we would have gone, like is on the map, that would have taken about a half an hour. But no, we went over here to Douala, we went up to Djamena, Chad, and then we came down to Yaoundé. 5 hours. It's still better than 30-some, believe me. But we had an interesting flight at all these places. We got to Chad, it was 110. We didn't have to get off the airplane, for which we were very glad. And when we got to Yaoundé, we were very glad to see many of our friends and visit with them and to meet some new friends. And then the conference began. And national conference is always interesting, especially in Africa. Here, our missionary, Karen Foster, is translating for Jason Carmine. Jason Carmine and his wife came to Cameroon to get a Bible Institute set up. He was a pastor, Brethren pastor in Ohio, but he doesn't know French yet. So Karen is translating for him. Eddie preached twice. Eddie does know French, so he didn't need a translator. Karen sold books. And we did a lot of visiting. And then I had a meeting with the women. And this is my translator. Now, I spoke in Songo. She translated into Fulfulde. Always interesting. And I had a good group. I took a message that I had heard in the summer. We had a series of messages at our church on the 10 Commandments. And this one was, "Thou shalt not steal." So the one who preached this message, the title was, "Church People in Thieves' Clothing." The title brought a lot of people in, I think. They wanted to know what in the world this was all about. It's not about church people stealing. It's about being selfish and not putting your faith and trust in God to supply your needs and trying to be a bit grabby to take care of these needs when we should be casting them on Him. Well, it was rather long, so I gave the first half the first day, and then the second half the second day, and I had a real pack-out crowd that day, so that was good, and they seemed to really appreciate it. Here Eddie is translating for Jason Carmine as he preached at conference. Our son-in-law works for the National Train Company in France. And very frequently they change uniforms, and then he has all these old uniforms he doesn't know what to do with. So he said, "I've got these, could you take them to Africa?" Fortunately enough, we had a spare suitcase. So we packed up all the uniforms, and then it was fun trying to find people who were about Philippe's size who would fit these uniforms. And this is Vincent, one of our evangelists, and it fit him really well. So he inherited one of Philippe's uniforms. Here he is with his mother and his aunt, showing off his new clothes. Well, new to him anyway. Most of the business is taken care of at conference like this, in little groups. They discuss something among themselves and then present it at conference. Armand, our president of our church, had been over discussing something with Eddie. Karen is probably explaining the new Bible Institute program to a group of men and ladies. Here is the conference kitchen. If you ever had to cook for a big group of people and griped about it a little bit, next time remember the African women. See that little house back there? They could use that, but it didn't have a roof. So it was still very hot in the sun, but they did a good job of getting meals to us. And here's a group of ladies having dinner and enjoying it. And then you have the dishes to do. And you get to carry the water in for the dishes on your head. Yeah, so they had a big job to do all the dishes, but they did a fine job. Now, I have had many people ask me, what does an African toilet look like? Well, the walls are made out of straw, usually, and this is the wall. This is what it looks like from the outside. The conference had one. They're unisex. You happen to want to use it, you go up and you say, "Tuk, tuk, tuk." And if they say, "Kukiti," you don't go in. You wait till you see them scoot out the other side, and then it's your turn. Well, let's go inside. There is a hole, that's about it. And this is one of the better ones. This actually has a little bit of cement on the ground, where they can keep it a little cleaner. But a big warning, do not look down the hole. It's a line down there. The women had a wonderful presentation and gave us all a gift. Ooh, let's go back here, there we go. Then all of our friends left and left us in Gownderry because we were going to have classes the next week. Eddie preached at this little church. It was a very small church, very packed with people, and very, very hot with no cross ventilation at all. I didn't know how Eddie made it through, but he did. And we had a good time, a fellowship there with the people.
The last few years I've been going through courses on Bible doctrine for our African lay preachers because they haven't had any Bible training. So I began with God and the world, God and Revelation, Christ and the Spirit, and this year was the doctrine of the church, the universal church and local church. And fortunately, Pastor Armand was with me, and he was present the last 4 years. He's visited all the churches, knows all their problems. So when they come up, I said, well, Armand, this is your area of specialty. So then he would take care of that. So we had about 25 men up there at Gownderry for my classes, and we spent a whole week having classes on the doctrine of the church.
I would go with Eddie every morning because we had to take a taxi, and that way we only had to take, one ride there, and they didn't have to come back after me. So I thought, well, I'll just go and study my lesson. Well, the women seemed to think I was sitting there all by myself. I needed entertainment, and I needed company. So here are two of the pastor's wives who came over to visit with me. But it was interesting just watching what was going on. Here are two kids getting ready to go to school. This is their school uniform. And they were running around collecting little sticks. I said, what are they doing that for? Well, they need to make a fire and heat up their dinner before they go, so they will eat and not be hungry while they're at school. I thought they were real cute kids. They would go to afternoon school and then come back late in the afternoon. This is a beauty parlor, and it takes about 3 hours for a nice hairdo. Then noontime came and we got fed, but after you eat, it's always siesta time. So here's a man, one of Eddie's students, laid out on a bench, and there are 3 laid out on the benches, probably sound asleep. Well, where are the women? Outdoors, of course, on a mat, under the tree, and here's 3 of them together. Well, let's go back in the church and take a second glance.
At least I have a soft chair.
Okay, siesta is now over with, and Eddie's classes are to begin at 2 o'clock. I was fortunate if I got mine started by 3 or 3:30. But here we are out under the tree, and the women began to come. I taught a course on the Christian life and also one on the Christian home. Now the one on the Christian life was a correspondence course, so we had some hands-on work with that, and we'd pass out and give a paper, and they would take a little test. Now these tests are not anything like taking a test here. They all help one another. All those who could write would take all the papers from those who couldn't and write down the answers for them. Nothing was recorded, so it didn't matter. And they had fun doing it. Little girl was in the middle of the class with Mother, and Mart was my translator. I think you'll get a picture of her again here soon. Here's some of the women doing the correspondence course. I had about 40 women in this class, a very good group of women. but not very many readers, about 5 or 6 at the most. Now the gal there with the little boy clear on the right squatting, she was the best reader. Oh, she could read terrifically well. And finally one day I said, "Who taught you how to read?" Well, she said, "Years ago, you used to come to our church every summer. You would come with the whole team. Your daughter was just a little girl then." And I was in the Lumiere class, and Eddie's sister, Carol, had that class and had taught her how to read. So Carol's ministry, even though Carol has been in heaven for many years, continues on, as she is now one of the main leaders of the women's group there. Now this is my translator who translated my lessons into Full Day, and a month before we got there, she lost her husband. He passed away, and she says, "Tell the people in America to pray for me. I still have children at home. I don't know how I'm going to support them and get them educated. Pray that the Lord will help give me the finances I need, the patience I need, the strength to raise my family and continue to serve the Lord." Wonderful lady, her name is Martha. When we finished our courses there, we again took the plane, and Karen met us at the taxi, and then we stayed for a day or so in her house and repacked again to go to Douala. Well, this time the plane ride wasn't quite as difficult. We only went up to Jemanachad again, and then we came back down to Yaoundé, and it was a good flight, much shorter, and we were able to get everything repacked and then take a bus the next day to go to Douala. We've always had our classes on the 3rd floor of a school building. You could look out over the roof construction, and it's very interesting. Most of the aluminum there is held down by rocks. As you can see on the roof there, there's a number of rocks. A few bricks. I'm sure there's a few nails here and there, but they're rather sparse. That building right next to us there is a sawmill that was very, very noisy. And then there were these darling children down in the course of the school, down in the schoolyard, with their cute pink smocks on. They were noisy too. Boy, could they make the racket. Adorable kids. And as I would watch them down there and hear them in the schoolroom, I was very glad I wasn't their teacher. Eddie had courses there with the men on the 3rd floor.
It was fun climbing about 100 steps every day. They didn't have any elevators there. And about 15 or 20 men again. And the one that you see on the left, his name is Gilbert. Even though we have a Bible Institute now on the high school level, those on the university level, we still want to send them to Bangui to get an advanced training, get a master's degree, to become teachers in our Bible Institute. And this young man, Gilbert, will be going this fall. So pray for him. Thank the Lord that we've been able to get finances for him. And so he will begin seminary training this fall in Bangui. So pray for their travel and safety as they go. And the Lord might continue to use him, prepare him for a future ministry in our Bible school.
As far as the women were concerned, this place was not exactly centrally located. So one time in the morning I would have 1, sometimes I'd have 2, sometimes I'd even have 3 students. But whoever came, I taught them. Then in the afternoon, I had this lady sometimes, but always this lady. Her name is Rosine, and she and her husband, Nestor, are church leaders in our church there. She not only knows how to read, but she also knows how to write. Very intelligent gal. She and her husband also fixed our meals for us. He is a chef. So we had probably the best meals at Douala that we had the whole time we were there. This is Nestor in the purple necktie, and a a leader there in the Lompoc church. And she came every afternoon. I taught her the classes, and she told me, she said, if you will just get me a copy of this book, I will take it home and teach the others. And I think she really will. So I got her a copy of it and prayed for Rosine as she teaches the lessons on the Christian home to the women in her church. Then the last Sunday we were there, Eddie preached at the Lompoc church and is translated into Boom. Here he is with his translator. We had an interesting musical group. Now this is a drum set made out of milk cans with rubber stretched across them, and actually they aren't bad. They at least keep the rhythm. They were doing so well, this little girl got up and danced to it, so it was quite entertaining. Little break in a very long, hot church service. Afterwards, we had a threefold communion service with a good attendance and a wonderful time of fellowship with the people of Douala. The next day, we took the bus and went back to Yaoundé, where we would have our last set of classes. Eddie again taught with Armand and had his best group of students there.
I had about 50 there, so if you add up the 3 places, about 100. And so these are church leaders. Some are the lay preachers, some are other church officers, but I want to expand it to include anybody who wants to serve the Lord and is capable of advanced theological education, and through this then they would go on. And fortunately, when they gave the exam for the Bible, the 25 out of this group were accepted. And so that's a good beginning. And so we just thank the Lord that finally they're realizing they're needed for some advanced theological training.
The men were there all day long, so they had to be fed at noon. So here's a lady with a baby, but that doesn't slow you down in Africa. You just strap them on your back and go about whatever you have to do. Here she is mixing the manioc, and it's getting to be very thick, so she needs some help. And that gets thicker and thicker until they form it into a great big ball. Then they have a sauce that goes with it. You grab a chunk of this and dip it in the sauce. You don't dare double dip. That's one of their rules. and eat it. It is about 100% starch. No vitamin content whatsoever. But it's a slow burner. You eat gozo or manioc in the morning and you don't get hungry again for a long, long time. So it does have its advantages. So here they are as they continue to stir it. Now they're done going home and will bathe and change their clothes and soon be in my class. I was able to give one of my lessons to Eugenie, who is Armand's wife. Very sharp gal, and she did a marvelous job at teaching this set of lessons on the Christian home. Definitely, Eugenie is a candidate for being one of our women's teachers in the Bible Institute. We had about 20 women that came to this class, and many of them could read, so it was a delight to teach this class and have them look up scripture. Really helped tremendously. Well, one day we had a cloudburst. This has been an interesting church because they're putting it together as they have the money. So they had enough money, first of all, to make 2 cement walls outside of the original walls without any windows. So when those cement walls heated up, you can imagine what it was like inside the church. It was an oven. I ran out of water the first day. I didn't do that again. Now you learn. But then one day, in the midst of it being absolutely terrifically hot, we got this cloudburst, and clear back there where you see a little light coming in, that's a waterfall. The roof stopped there, and so all the water came pouring into the church, and we had puddles, little lakes, all over everywhere. I said, where can we go where it's dry? There's only one one place, behind the pulpit. So we all crowded behind the pulpit while the rain just poured down. And we were there over an hour before we could finally have the rest of the lessons and finish up and then begin to go home. Well, Easter came while we were there, and we decided we would have our Easter celebration on Saturday instead of on Sunday because all of us were involved in ministry on Sunday. So this is the Jensen's apartment. The Jensens are a couple who retired from the ministry here in the States and went to Cameroon. First they went to Central Africa. They had a war, so they moved to Cameroon and have been helping in the ministry there. This is their apartment, and this is probably the only time all of us missionaries were together in one place for a time of fellowship. And we had a wonderful time of fellowship as the Carmeens were there with their family, Doug and Jackie were there, Karen and Annie and I. And then the next day, Easter morning, bright and early, Eddie got to preach at a little church plant that Armand has started. He has a real burden to reach the Cameroon people. And he said the only way we're going to do this is if we have the service in French. So his service in this little church plant, his services are all in French. And Eddie was able to preach there. And then we moved down to the very hot church for another Easter service. And I was able that time to find a little place where the brick wall wasn't, and a little bit of air came in. So I made it through the service. The kids gave a presentation, the women gave several, the men had one, and the kids had another, but the one I was the most impressed with was the young people. They had given out sections of the Easter story to all of these kids, and they memorized them and didn't goof up on any of them. And as soon as one would finish, another one popped up and continued on till they had told the whole Easter story. I thought they did a terrific job, and it was really impressive. Eddie then preached and was translated into Boom. The women had one more presentation, and then we exited and went to Armand and Eugenie's place for Easter dinner. What did we have? Kidneys. Eddie said he didn't eat any. I ate his share. They aren't all that bad. Kidneys and a few other things, but kidney was the meat. This is our new Bible Institute, a rented building from another mission, and they fixed it up. We have 25 couples that are now in this Bible Institute. So pray for them as they get that going. Especially pray for the women's section. They took a survey. There are 5 main language groups among the women. What are they going to be teaching the courses in? Who's going to teach the courses? They have a few problems yet to iron out with them. Well, after this time, we flew again back to Paris, and this time we spent 3 weeks with our kids. We were able to celebrate Philippe and Susie's birthdays and visit with friends. The gal there in the red jacket, her father was our doctor in the Central African Republic, Dr. Walker. Tina worked with us for a while in Cameroon, and now she's working for the United Nations in Geneva. We preached, Eddie preached, at the Dijon Church. The message was, walk in love. This is a marvelous story. This is a church our kids go to. We used to go there and there were maybe 25, 30 people in the group. And today, if you want to get a seat, you better get there early. To have over 100 is not unusual at all. This church has really grown. And now they are looking for property so they can expand and have more room for more people. So we thank the Lord for the ministry there. People ask us about Central African Republic. week. There are still skirmishes, it's still dangerous in many areas, and we have still been refused as far as being able to go back. We are praying much to get back at least one more time. When we left, we were taken out by the French military. We said goodbye to our missionary friends, but that was it. And we really want to get back and see our friends one more time, minister to them, and be able to say a decent goodbye. And we pray that we'll be able to do that before we're too old to go back, and that's coming up. So pray with us that that will be possible, maybe even next year. Continue to pray for CAR. There's a number of reconciliation teams that have been in there. Ibali Augustin, one of our church leaders, has been on these teams. And pray that somehow they can get the two groups to quit killing each other and to put down their arms and to allow peace to happen. On our station, Ibali and his wife Marie Hélène are running our station and doing a terrific job. Pray for them as they try to continue to minister in difficult situations and also to the people who come in to visit. Janet Varner, there in the middle, has been allowed to go back, but she is very limited in travel. She cannot go off the station without Mr. Ibali checking it out first of all, to see if it's safe, find somebody that is safe to drive her, because we are not yet using any of our own cars. They're still stealing cars. So we go any place, we take a taxi. So you've got to be sure that you get somebody good as a taxi driver too. So it's difficult. But Janet is there. Pray for her safety and for her ministry as she tries to be an encouragement to people who come in to the station. One of the wonderful things is that our seminary buildings are still intact. They went through the war, but were not destroyed. This is a new one. A classroom building and a library that is almost finished and will soon be used. We have had classes this past year, and 8 couples are now living out on the seminary property in the duplexes. Pray for Gumapi and Claire as they continue to direct the seminary, and pray for their family that is scattered all over the world because of the schooling and the war situation there. They want desperately to get back into their old house, which was gutted during the war. But that takes money to rebuild it, or to rebuild the inside, to get the furniture they need. So pray that this need will be met. If they can get that house fixed up, they're only a kilometer away from the seminary. As it is now, they're in town, have to take a very dangerous moto taxi back and forth. There have been a number of accidents, not by them, but by others who have been in accidents with these moto taxis. So they are praying much that they'll be able to get into their house and walk to school and not have to take that type of transportation. We hope that you are praying for the Central African Republic. Pray with these men, church leaders, who are praying much that peace will be restored in Central Africa. Usually there's an applause at this point. Not for us, but for you who prayed for us and gave so that our last trip was possible. We weren't sure we were going to be able to go in the last minute. The money came in, and we were able to get what we needed and make this trip. And we just thank any of you who supported us in this, and any of you who prayed for us. Certainly, we cannot do it without your prayers. So if you hear that these old men singers have gone back to Africa again, please uphold us in prayer. Each time it gets a little harder, I will admit that. But we do need your prayers, and because of that, as Eddie mentioned, we weren't sick. We were able to do the ministry God had taken us there to do, and a big part of that is thanks to you who prayed for us. Thank you.
of all, I'd like to bring you some greetings. I don't know how many of you remember, but your church helped to support Armand when he was in our seminary up at Bata. He graduated in 2007, served as pastor the last 4 years, was president of our association. And I hate to admit it, but I was very disappointed he wasn't reelected. But he said, that's okay. I accept it as God's will. And since he's no longer tied down with these administrative duties, he's now freed up to be one of our teachers in the seminary. And I'm sure he'll do a wonderful job because he's had 4 years of examining all the problems in the churches so he can warn the students what they're going to be facing. But with the seminary training now, he's certainly qualified as a Bible teacher. And so this will free him up now to be one of the teachers. So remember Armand and his family. They're trying to build a house, but of course in Africa, he doesn't have property. He's got the foundation in, but it's going to cost some money. And he's also have 5 children in school. And the 2 girls are already covered, but they have 3 boys that he's hoping that some of us can maybe help them a little bit with their tuition. It's not as bad as it is here in the States, but it's getting close to $100 a piece or so. So he said, pray for me and my ministry and for my family that the Lord will continue to provide. But he's been a faithful servant, and just pray for continued ministry. Gumapi also sends his greetings, and I'll be sharing a little more in the church service of what he's involved in right now. But the Lord has protected him and his family. 4 of the children are in Ghana, the ones in higher education. 1 daughter's in France with his brother, and the 2 girls that have spent 2 years at Wainoa Lake now have been able to get enrolled in the Rainforest Academy in Yaoundé, where all the missionary children attend. And since they've had 2 years in the States, they know English quite well. We had supper with them. And so he's glad they were able to go over there because there's still unrest in Bangui. The school situation is not stable, and he wants his kids to get a good education. But of course, it's hard for the parents having their kids scattered all over Africa, but to continue to pray for them. But he wanted me to share his greetings since most of you remember him and Claire. So now we can take some questions that you might have. Maybe Linda should explain what this gozer manioc is. There's nothing like it here in the States. She likes it, I don't care especially, but if you want to share a word about that, and then any questions you might have.
Well, without a doubt, you've eaten it before. Tapioca pudding is made out of it. But any resemblance to what we eat would be purely coincidental. It's a root, gets to be about yay big, and they dig it out of the ground, and it's chopped up and put in water for several days because it's very poisonous. If you eat it right out of the ground, you get extremely sick. So you put it in the water, and that soaks the poison out. Then after a few days, they go and take it out of the water and put it out on the rocks to dry. And when it's dry enough, they sweep it all up and take it home and pound it with their, the poo they call it, this big thing with a pestle in it, and they pound it into flour, mix it with hot water until it's very thick and well mixed, put it in a great big ball, and that they eat with a sauce that they've made. That could be various and sundry things. They eat a lot of leaves, manioc leaves, spinach, of course, is a very popular one, and bean leaves. But, and they make some very good sauces out of those. Almost any sauce they make, they put peanut butter in. So if it has peanut butter in it, how can it be bad, And onions and many other good things. So they just take a chunk of this and dip it in and eat it. It kind of takes the place of bread, like we have, or rice, or just the starch that they have to eat. As I say, no vitamins, but it is filling.
Yeah. Did I see one African lady picture with slacks? In one of your pictures?
You might have if they were working. Yeah. Now Cameroon's a little more loose on this than modern on this than Central Africa is.
I saw that picture too. I think it was the group that was doing dishes.
Yes, they were working. If they're gonna come to the church service, they probably will go home and change. But for a working situation, yeah, you will see them ever so often in slacks. Not yet very many in Central Africa. Some of the young people, yes. But
They make the slacks themselves.
oh, you can buy them in the Schwazi, you know, these things you give to the poor. They put them in great big bundles and send them over there and open them up, and you haggle with Muslims, with the Arabs over them, and I bought a few things there. You can, ever so often they have dollar bills in them, so. Not there.
So, Linda, they have such bright clothing. Do they make their own clothes, or can they buy? Because I notice most of the scarves match their dresses.
That would probably only happen in Cameroon. They aren't real into matching things, but they're getting better at it. They would probably buy the scarves, and there's material for sale all over everywhere. Different grades, different prices. You just go and dicker, and it comes in six meters, which is a little over a yard. 6 of those in a piece of material, and you can make quite a bit out of those.
So do they have sewing machines?
They have tailors. Now some of the women do sew, and they sew their own, but most of the tailors are men, and you take them to a tailor and they will make them. Just before I came home, I had bought one of those 6-yard things of material the year before, but I hadn't had time to have anything made. So I asked one of the gals, do you know anybody who could make a dress for me? Well, yes, I found someone, so I gave it to them. Well, it came back with 2 dresses, exactly alike. But they had done a nice job, and they said, well, we told them to do 2 dresses because they had a lot of material left over, and any of it left over they would have kept. So they said to make the 2 dresses. Well, as it turned out, I had a very good friend who had lost her husband, who had worked with us in Africa, and we stayed with them in Winona Lake, so I gave her the 2nd dress. She was very thrilled, so it all worked out very well.
Is it nice material that has to be ironed, or is it polyester? Or...
No, it would be best if it's ironed. You don't want anything with polyester in it. Yes. Yeah, it's cotton, yeah. I had one once with polyester in it. It was hot. I would only wear it, and it was a nice dress, but I'd only wear it if it happened to be somewhat cool, because it is really hot.
Well, the seminary in Longview, is the construction finished?
Of the seminary? Not completely, no.
It's still working?
Yes.
And it's going well? And...
Seems to be. Now Gumapi has, it's a local man now who's doing the building, but he seems to be doing a good job, and Gumapi's very pleased with him, so.
I think that building may be finished. We took that when we were there, and so they've had a year to work on it, so at least they're having classes there now. And they have 4 duplexes for 8 families. But they would like to build more duplexes, a house for the professors, and so forth. So there's a big project, but, you know, under the question of money and the conditions and little by little, but at least the seminary's having their classes there now.
And you all are planning to go back next year?
We hope.
Lord willing, if our health is good and we'll survive the knee operation. And we would like to go to Bangui at least once more, just to say goodbye to our friends.
Early.
When the men go to seminary, they take their whole family.
Yes. They do, and get the kids in school there, they hope. There have been a few that sent kids back because the school situation was so poor to a family member if they came from Cameroon. The wife will take classes right along, not with the husband, but there are special classes for the women. They do have Bible courses. Mostly it's the Bible Institute program because they aren't, for the most part, on the level with the men. If they are that level, they can take men's classes right along with them, and some have.